And hello everyone, welcome back to another Tkinter tutorial. Today we will be covering radio buttons. So first we need to know what's the difference between a radio button and a checkbox, because some of you might get confused if I do not explain this part. So you get two types of things. We're not going to be covering checkboxes today, but I do want to show you that there is a difference. We'll be covering radio buttons. So a radio button, you'll mostly notice them on websites, as a circle. And maybe a thingy there if it's selected. And it's like this, for example. And you have an option A, B, and C. And then you have a button that says submit or send or something. I'm going to say sub M for submit. So this is kind of the example of a radio button. The thing here is you can only select one of these. So if I want to choose option A, I can only choose option A. If I want to choose option B, I can only choose option B. And that's a radio button. You can only choose one of the options given to you. Where with a checkbox, you'll notice they look something like this. Let's make the checkbox red. So you'll have this, you'll have this, and you'll have this. They'll usually be checkboxes, but they may not. And here, let's say we have option A, option B, and option C. That does not look like a C. Let's fix that. C. And then we have a button for submitting. So there we go. Now this checkbox, you can have you can select multiple of these. For example, I can select option A and option B. Or I can select option C and option A, or even all of them if I wanted to. So that's the difference. A checkbox will allow you to select any number of them. So you can select this one, and this one. While a radio button will only allow you to select one of them. So that's the difference between them. For right now, you don't need to know much about the checkbox. We will be covering them again in a future video. But radio buttons are very important for this video because we'll be covering them. So first, if we want to create a radio button, we want to do something like this. I'm going to call mine RBG for like radio button group, because radio buttons have to be in a group, so you can only select one of them. If they're not in a group, you can select all of them. We don't want that. Anyhow, then RBG, and let's say we want to get the age range. So here we can say age, and I'm going to say 10 to 18. This is a very bad naming convention. Do not ever follow my naming conventions. They're very terrible. Very, very terrible. Very bad. And that would be a radio button. And this radio button will be attached to root in this case with the text. And maybe I should just fix it. That's very bad. I don't think that is good in it. Or for now, I think that's fine. As the example, it will work perfectly fine. And here we can say 10 to 18. And here we can maybe put a label here. So label.pack. And I just want to go here and say text is equal to select your age range. There we go. And then underneath that, I want to maybe put a button of text of submit, and we can just say .pack. And yeah, then here we didn't need to put this here, but it is recommended at the moment. But anyways, let's copy this. Let's put that there and pack, and let's see if it actually works. If it doesn't work, then we should fix our code. And here we go. Select your age range, and then we have one option we can select. And then we have a submit button. Okay, now let's add a few more. So let's go like this. Okay, now this will be... There we go. Let's run it and see our code. Okay, so here we go. We have 4 radio buttons. Okay, now when we click on one of these radio buttons, they should contain a value, and that value is what should be given to the user, or should be given to the backend so we can use it. Let's go here, and just with all of them, we can just select all of them, and here we can say value. Whoops, not in all caps. value, not in all caps is what I said. There we go, value. And this value can basically contain your data you want to hold it. So let's say teen, 20, 30, and 40. There we go, and that should be a 49, that should be a 39, that should be a 29. There we go. So this means you're in your teenage years, this is in your 20 years, 30 and 40 years. That's basically what we're having here. Now, when we want to store this value inside of something, we need to put it inside of a variable, right? So one thing we do need to do is then create a variable to store it in. So we can say user age, and user age and my word. Okay, so I already started with camel case, so let's just user age. Okay, there we go. So user age is then equal to, and here I want to say a string var. So here can be a few things. This can be a string var, a bool var, if I'm not mistaken, and an integer var for an integer variable, and probably a float as well. But basically, you have to say your type you want to store in here. In this case, we're trying to store strings. If you're not quite sure what a string is, then I do recommend you go watch my Python tutorial where we do talk about strings. So just the data types video. And yeah, so this can be an int var if you need an integer, so like that, int var. But in this case, we're going to stick with string var because we're trying to store strings. And then we want to give it a default value. So we can say user age dot set, and here we can set this to, let's say by default, it will be 18. So if you don't choose an option, it will be 18 by default. Now here, we want to say in what variable this should be stored. And take note, I'm storing all of them inside the same variable. So here we can say variable, whoops, I cannot type, variable is equal to, and here I want to say user age, because we want to store it inside of this variable right here, with the special type of a string var. Okay. Now that we have this, let's maybe just resize a little bit so we can see a bit better. I guess it didn't really help all of them, but I think that should be good enough. Okay. And yeah, for right now, I believe this is enough. This probably won't really change much and everything, but here you can see, this one has like a little dot inside of it. It means this is selected. If I select here, you can see the dot moved. It's no longer in there because this is the new one that's selected. And as we click here, as you can see, it changes. So that is basically what's going on here. If we were to change this default value, which in this case is teen, to let's say 30, we paste that in there. Then as you can see now, it is by default at 30. So yeah. That is how you can kind of split it up, and this is the value it will send back, and all of that. Now let's actually use an example, or do an example where we actually use these things. So I'm going to create another label here, one that I can put on the screen so you can see the age range. So I'm going to say LBL age range is equal to, and here we can maybe specify a label with a default value of nothing. So this label isn't going to contain anything. That should be a label. Define set user age. This will allow us to set the user age because we want to change this if they click on it. And I'm going to then say a colon here. And I'm going to get global LBL age range because we want to modify this label here. Okay, so what we want to do is we don't want it to reproduce itself. So while we're at it, let's destroy it. So we can just say LBL age range, and remember we're accessing this age range right here because we're using the global scope variable here. So LBL age range, that's LBL there, LBL age range dot destroy. And this means if there's already a label age range on the page, then we're going to destroy it because we didn't want it there. So we're going to remove it. And in here, we can reassign this variable. We can reassign it here to the same thing but with different text, and we can just go here and say lbl age range dot pack. There we go. So now we'll pack it on the screen. Now what do we want to put here? We want to put the age range. So you are in your, and I'm not going to fix all of this to say 20s, 30s, and 40s. So it's going to be perfectly fine like that. And then we can just add, and we can say user age dot get. So what this is going to do is it's going to go and search for this label right here, and we forgot to add them to root, my bad. There we go. It's going to search for this label, for this variable right here, not this label, and it's going to call get method on it. This allows us to get the input or get the value from something like this. And I'm just going to move this down a bit so it's there. Okay, so now it's this user age is above it, but this doesn't matter. This user age can be below this because this get method will work perfectly fine. But anyhow, now that we have that, we want to add that command here. So I'm going to just go here and say command is equal to, and we can say set user, I meant to set delete, set user age. Take note, I'm not adding parentheses here. I'm not doing this. If you do this, it's going to execute it. We don't want it to execute. We only want it to execute when this command says execute. Anyhow, now if we were to run this Python code, if we were to go here, as you can see, you're in your 20, you're in your teen, and it doesn't stack the labels underneath each other like it usually would because we said destroy. And when we go here, so every time we click on it, it executes this command right here, that command variable. It executes it, and then this command variable basically says this because it's set user age. So it goes here and it's like, okay, let's get this variable right there. Then here we want to destroy it if it already exists, so it doesn't go underneath each other the whole time. Then we want to take it and we want to create a new version of it with the variable that's being stored there. So the value is being stored inside of this variable, and we want to get the value and you want to pack it to the screen. And that's what's happening here. And that's why this works. Okay, so yeah, that's the basics of radio buttons. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next Tkinter tutorial.